Hey everyone, welcome to Make Your Peace, a 4YE podcast about Wynonna Earp. I'm Catherine Meushaw.
And I'm Lara Hayes.
And today we're discussing Season 1, Episode 8, Two-Faced Jack. And this is a spoiler-free discussion and then a spoiler-filled one. So if you're new to Wynonna Earp and don't want to be spoiled, don't worry, we do have a warning, mostly lengthy one, before the spoiler section. So you will have plenty of warning to shut off the podcast beforehand. And with that, Lara, do you have a quick recap?
I do. So as Waverly, Doc, and Dawes close in on the last of the 7 revenants, thereafter, Wynonna wakes to find herself the prisoner of a demented killer.
Alrighty. So, where would you like to start?
Well, funnily enough, I didn't see a song title for this episode. If someone knows of an artist who has written a song entitled Two-Faced Jack, let us know. It seems that the title in this case is really about our 7th Rev, the Jack of Knives. I did find a song called Two-Faced Preacher by Hank Williams. That's as close as I could get.
There's apparently a Two-Faced Jack beer, though.
There's apparently a what?
A Two-Faced Jack beer.
Oh.
So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that's because most of the stuff has been song titles, so that's really interesting that this one wasn't.
Yeah, this one kind of diverged.
I think it's one of the only ones that does.
Yeah, so far, yeah.
Yeah, even thinking about, this might be the only one that does. Cool. Well then, where do we start from here? I guess we should, probably talk about, well, I don't know, but where would you like to go? Because we got a lot of good stuff in this episode. This was an excellent episode.
So real quick, I just need to know, does a blood-covered police cruiser count as a body part? Because that looked like the blood from several body parts.
No, it's a blood-covered police cruiser, Lara. It is not a body part.
Okay, well then, if not, this was a tough week for me personally. And I know I'm trying to get my body parts before the credits, but Bethany's open breathing chest cavity has got to count for something.
It counts for something, yes, and she does have organs removed, so technically that is a body part removed.
It's
so
one of
a body part, so I think that counts.
Yeah, it's easily one of the most gruesome moments on this show, period.
It really is.
Yeah, because she's alert. It's ugh.
And it's really,
that's a good one.
The prop was pretty good, too.
Yeah, true, yeah.
The prop and the makeup department for that one.
Mm-hmm. Shout out.
Yeah, because it was good. No, it was good. Yeah, there were a couple, the open chest cavity thing, and then Reggie, using the clamp thing on Wynonna's toe were pretty awful.
Yeah.
I cannot deal with the toe.
Yeah, they were really, really bad moments.
Yeah, and I mean, Wynonna had to keep a straight face while he, it's just, Wynonna's just awesome. I would have been nope, can't do it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely not.
Yeah, I would have probably been more like Bethany. I would have just been nope, can't do it, sorry. Just gonna...
Dibs out. But look at what happened to Bethany. Sometimes you gotta take a little toe blood, I
don't deal well with pain, and, Bethany might not have felt things. We don't know.
True. Although, I will say Wynonna trying to wiggle her toes definitely reminded me of Kill Bill Volume 1.
I have never seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a scene where she wakes up from a coma. It's it's her first time awake in 4 years, and she can't move her legs. They're in entropy. And so she's sitting in the back of a car, and she's telling herself, wiggle your big toe. And she's just trying to get her toes to wiggle.
Oh, all right. And I feel you may not be having a great track record with your body parts.
I'm not.
It's one of those times where
I wish it's ruined.
This is one of those times where I kind of wish we Skyped this, because the look on my face was probably really worth seeing with the way I said that. But no, you seem to be having a pretty good track record for mentioning movies that I haven't seen.
Oh well, hey, yeah. There's that. That's something. There's also a Fight Club callback with Whiskey Jim's like rule
Yeah.
number one, moron. Yeah, like we don't tell Black Badge about Fight Club. That was pretty funny.
I did like that where I do like that line because I have it in my notes or I have it in my quotes where Doc is like, "There's only two rules," and Dolls is just like, "Oh, let me guess. The first one is don't talk about it," and Doc's like, "Well, if you don't talk about it, how are you gonna know where it is?" I love that line so much.
It is good.
Yeah, it makes me laugh, but yeah, so at least you can pretty much be guaranteed if you mention a movie, there's like a big chance I won't see it. I wouldn't have seen it, apparently.
Gonna have to make a new note section to keep track of that.
Just have a running, yeah, since I still haven't seen some of the things you yelled at me like ages ago about. I'm like, what? That's not what this is about. Anyway, so Wynonna got kidnapped.
She did.
This episode for Melanie Scrofano,
Mm-hmm.
so good. She's been pretty strong, but I mean, I think this is definitely one of her best performances in this episode. Because we get to see such a different side of Wynonna, or such a different, yeah. I mean, because there's such a different, like, psychology to this than there has been.
Mm-hmm.
So she does a phenomenal job, and I absolutely, I love her in this episode.
Yeah.
I was very pleased because I said this in the spoiler section last week, but after the cliffhanger that the last episode left us,
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to request screeners. And I had been like, oh no, I'm not going to do it. But with that cliffhanger, I was like, oh my God, I have to see it if Nicole's okay. I panicked. I'm like, oh my God, I have to see if Nicole's okay. So I watched this episode and got an opportunity to to interview Melanie. And I am so glad it happened with this episode because that's a good one to watch ahead of time, ahead of everyone else, to just watch your timeline and be like, oh my God, I can't wait to see how they react to this.
Yeah.
But having the opportunity to talk to her about this episode was really cool because it was just such a different side of Wynonna. And, you guys can, shameless self-promotion, you guys can find my write-up of that interview on 4YE site underneath my stuff. If you want me to link you to it, I can. I've got the links handy.
It was a good interview.
Thank you. But, it's one of the ones that what Melanie talked about a lot was, Wynonna can't whip her way out of this. She kind of has to figure this out on her own. And she's really vulnerable in a way we haven't seen Wynonna before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really great episode for that. And I like the psychology of it. Because, Wynonna's got, they did give us the contrast there with Wynonna willing to fight and fight and fight. And Bethany just like, well, all right, this is where I'm at. This is where my fate. So, yeah, I wanted to mention that just because I really love the psychological aspect of what they gave us in this episode.
Kind of branching off from that, a long-standing theme in season 1 is that revenge is an empty pursuit, right? Like that kind of keeps coming up throughout the season. And we really see that sort of augmented in this episode. Like Jack asks Wynonna what she'll do once he's gone, essentially. And, with none of the 7 left to pursue, kind of, what will she become? And she cries after she kills him. It's a wonderful piece of acting by Melanie. It's also just a wonderful moment for the character. She's drinking, when in the next scene we see her when she torches the photo of the 7. And, Waverly asks her, what's next? And she genuinely does not know. She's accomplished this goal, which was maybe, and people tried to tell her that it was short-sighted or that she needed to be in it for more than that. And now, she's completely empty by the end of the episode.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, and I think we talked about this before, but, she hasn't been focused on, I got to take out all the revs. I got to focus on the people who, the immediate people who hurt my sister, who came and attacked the homestead. So yeah, it is. It's very well done. Even the music in this episode, with Wynonna, there's not a lot of there's some general stuff we get with scores. I could not think of the word. A general kind of score we get with Wynonna and Jack, but we don't get a lot of music. Not like we do in previous episodes. And I think that was really well done. But yeah, that last bit with Waverly and Wynonna, especially her getting that closure with not only killing Jack, but, she kind of takes that moment to burn the photograph of the seven with Ward. So yeah, just kind of leave her in a really uncomfortable position. And unfortunately, Jack is right, where it's, there's going to be with, like, how this is going to affect her and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
I really like this episode, and it is an important one because we kill the last of the seven. The seven are gone in the first 8 episodes of the series, which I kind of like from the pacing point of view. She's got 70 other revenants to kill. Like, she's got so many more to kill, and I like how they set it up. It's like, no, she's gonna be able to put this behind her quickly.
Yeah. I like that, like we get this, the nice thing that this episode does is I think they know that they're giving you this conclusion, right, to the hunt for the seven. So they bring in these like other questions, which is really smart, or set up, like these helpful reminders. Yeah. Because we see like, the whole thing that, causes bad blood between Doc and Dolls is that Jimmy, who runs the Fight Club, gives Doc shredded documents, right, that Dolls has reported to BBD saying that, he's an amazing specimen, and they need to cut him up and study him and whatever. And, we know that Bobo provided that information. We know that he got his hands on it. And Jimmy makes a comment about Bobo having friends in high places, and Doc says something about the documents being classified. And so, we're left with this sort of, question of, what is Bobo's connection to BBD? Is there one? We know that Bobo's a bad guy. So what does that make BBD? And in the end, to kind of clinch it, right, we see Dolls abducting Jimmy, giving him to BBD in their place. And we see him, like preparing to torture this revenant for information. So we're really left wondering like what BBD stands for by the end of the episode, and who are the good guys.
I mean, kind of along that vein, now that you've mentioned Whiskey Jim, can we just talk about his pants and his shoes for a second? Like, I totally have another unrelated comment about, like, kind of some of the shady crap that we found out this episode, but since we've brought up Whiskey Jim, can we talk about his red pants and his fabulous zebra print cowboy boots?
I think we would be remiss if we did not talk about it. Go ahead.
I just think they're really fabulous. And I think I missed it on the first watch, his boots. I think I got it on my second watch, like when I was watching with everybody on Twitter. But yeah, it's a pretty fabulous outfit. I just had to say something about it because it's just every time I watch, I think I forget about it until I first see him, and I'm like, oh my god.
So, there they are.
He's very stylish.
There are the pants and the boots.
Yeah, but now also about that, like, we also get something from Jack, who says something about Ward making an alliance with Bobo. So it's not just who does Bobo know on the outside and who is he making alliances with. It's who he's making alliances with in general, because Jack's sitting here going, oh, well, he and Bobo were friends. And
right. I liked your dad.
Yeah, and Wynonna's kind of unwilling to really acknowledge that there might have been this part of Ward. She's content with not believing him, which seems reasonable. I mean, he is a revenant, but he also has no reason to lie.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting level as well. We get a lot of really interesting pieces to the revenants and Wynonna and everything.
I really like Jack's comment to Wynonna about how they both prefer to hunt alone. It gave me massive Buffy versus Dracula flashbacks.
Oh, yes. That is, I think, an underappreciated episode. But yes, definitely.
Isn't the end of that episode Dawn's debut?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it really shouldn't be an underrated episode because it sort of rewrote the entire series. Not sort of, did.
Mm-hmm. But it also,
come on, everybody.
It gave us a theme for season 5, and, it did set up that very nice, like, the killer thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was Dracula's whooping Buffy. So, sorry, not sorry. Buffy feels. You're welcome, Kevin.
I also just really liked that tactic on Bobo's part. I liked seeing his manipulation be a bit savvier than his usual, like, fear of death, intense pain stuff. It wasn't showy, you know what I mean? Like, he really tailored it to his audience to get what he wanted. And yeah, and I like the tension that sets up and the question mark that puts on BBD, but also just I thought it was nice to see Bobo employing a different tactic.
Yeah, and it does give another, like, example of Bobo has ears and eyes around town. Like, even though he's been having some trouble with his men, he still does have, the Revenants are loyal to him, and, he is he knows what's up. Like, It wasn't just, he could have given that to Doc at any time. Mm-hmm. He could have found Doc. He knows where Doc's been. Like, but he chose to give it to Whiskey Jim when, he found out who had Wynonna. Like, he's smart. So, yeah, or he just kind of expected it. I mean, it's like, we know Doc's paid a visit to Whiskey Jim since he's, gotten out of the well, because he owes him $10K. How? Doc, like...
He's a high-stakes poker man, dude.
Yeah, he knows how to play, though.
High-stakes gambler.
I do enjoy the Fight Club, though.
Yeah, it's fun.
Like, when Doc and Dolls are fighting, and the look on Doc's face when Dolls is getting ready to fight is the best. Tim's facial expressions sometimes. Because he does it again when Doc's trying to drive Dolls' car.
Yeah.
It's just, he's hilarious.
That was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah.
It was him trying to get behind the wheel of that car, yeah.
It makes me laugh every time. It's so good. Because it is just one of those really funny things. It's like you don't really, poor Doc has never had to worry about driving a car. I mean, he probably should learn, though.
I also like in the beginning of the episode where he's just, he finds this bloody cruiser, but he's just so thrilled to see a horse.
Yes!
I was so happy for him.
Yeah, because he finds the playing card, that calling card, and says something about the devil, and then sees the horse, and it's something about it being like an angel. And finding the horse, and then later when he's like parked it, because he's parked it outside the sheriff's station, and Nedley like kind of yells at him to move the horse.
Nedley was pretty adorable in this episode.
Oh yes,
we got that really nice moment, like him saying that he would feed Nicole's cat, but right before that. We see him protecting her, and kind of up until this point, he's really just the dude that makes her work on the weekends, right?
Yeah.
But then, we see him kind of standing guard and, he's obviously very apprehensive about Dolls questioning her until a doctor signs off on it. He wants to make sure that she's okay. And that was a really nice moment for him.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Nedley had I do enjoy that with offering to go feed the cat. But yeah, I mean, and for someone who was barely alive, I mean, Nicole looks pretty good for somebody who had to be like resuscitated on site. But yeah, I mean, he's very protective of his detectives and stuff like that. He has his moments. He really does, and that's one of them. So yeah, we get Nicole looked pretty good this episode for the little bit we got to see her. I was very glad she was okay. I was genuinely worried.
We just get that one little forehead cut, but it's butterflied. She's all right. She's going to make a full recovery. Mm-hmm. No buried gay.
Yeah, no, and we get the nice, we get to see her hair down a little bit and that nice blue top.
Sure.
Just like really good on her and everything. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, she almost died, but she's fine. And Waverly's like sad little sling. An adult, like, especially, it's just, she looks so sad, especially when she's, like, going to go see Nicole in the hospital. But, yeah, that, the sling, I use the term sling loosely, like, and then Dolls telling she can't go anywhere with that broken wing of hers. It's not broken. It would be in a cast. It's just,
Yeah, it's basically a blanket. It's a sheet that somebody cut up and made a sling. I do like
t-shirt.
Yeah. I do like, like we don't get a lot of Waverly in this episode, but I love her brain acrobatics, anytime that happens. So, I mean, she swings from, worried, hopeless, crying in Doc's arms right into full on research mode. The second Dolls kind of mentions something that she can work with, and then it's time to consult the aged map of purgatory again. So I really liked that,
Me too. And it is like, it's nice. And I think it kind of made it evidence that she's one of those people who is like, okay, yeah, let me do something to help. Like, I want to help. I can't just sit around doing anything.
Yes. Let me be useful. Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
I like that. And it caused them to mention prohibition, which upset Doc to no end.
Yeah.
But I mean,
he was glad he was trapped in a well for that.
Yeah. But I mean, I was a little confused about that because we've gotten hints that this is Canada, from Doll's first arriving on scene and being told he has no jurisdiction up there because he's a U.S. Marshal. So I thought this was interesting because prohibition was, the U.S. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, but Canada would have probably been, I mean, I don't know. Admittedly, you guys, I don't know much Canadian history, but I would imagine that there were smuggling tunnels between Canada and the U.S., right?
Yeah, probably. Oh, okay.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you consider, them being our closest neighbor to the north. You know what I mean? Like, if there was booze there, somebody was getting it into the United States. So I would imagine, that there was probably plenty of booze smuggling happening on top of bootlegging, during Prohibition.
Sorry, I should have Googled. I was being a lazy Googler. It was National Prohibition, a temporary wartime measure from 1918 to 1920. So Canada did have prohibition, just not in the same way.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it was a wartime thing, not necessarily like So sorry for not.
Cool, us too, Canada, us too.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, it was still a wartime act. Okay, cool. I don't know my history, and it lasted significantly longer in the U.S. than it did in Canada. Canada was only 2 years.
All right, yeah.
History is apparently.
So points for everyone.
Sorry for not Googling ahead of time. The only thing I remember about Prohibition is some random weird family fact. So apparently my grandfather was one of the first ones locally who had a liquor license after Prohibition ended. So he was the first one. That's the only thing I routinely remember about Prohibition is my weird family fun fact. So I was like, because I'm pretty content believing that purgatory is just in Canada. I think we know enough to know that. So I was like, wait a minute, Prohibition, but yeah, no, it's always good to see Waverly kind of get to have that research moment too, where she gets to kind of be helpful, and it was doubly important in this episode to see that. Another thing about Wynonna, just a lot of the moments she had with Reggie. She kind of got a moment not only to be vulnerable in a really different way than we've seen her and a chance to kind of show a different strength, but she also kind of got a second to kind of be smart in a different way than we see her. She makes an offhand comment to Reggie about like, oh, I thought about going to med school, but then also completely calls him out on Princeton not having a med school thing.
Yeah. Like,
she immediately knew he was BSing because she knew that. So that was kind of a nice thing to see as well. Like, because we kind of get, I guess, kind of like a street smart Wynonna usually, but we don't a lot of times get like book smart Wynonna. She exists. We know she's smart, but it was nice to see that too. So I just really like this episode just for a Wynonna episode.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I think it was sort of a double-edged kind of a moment for her too, because like, she makes that comment and she dismisses it with a joke. Like, I wanted to be a doctor, a solid, D- said otherwise, whatever. But if she knows, what schools offer medical programs and what don't, then, that means that she actively looked into it. You know what I mean? So that was kind of, it was a cool moment for her, and she was showing off her knowledge. And on the other side of that, I guess, is that this was a genuine interest, and it was something that she looked up. You know what I mean? Like, she looked into medical programs and stuff like that, but it just didn't work out for her.
I mean, it's just that moment is so multi-layered because here she is. She knows something's not right. She's been made to think that she's paralyzed. Like, it's not a temporary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just confirmed that she's not in an actual hospital.
Yeah.
So she's just
yeah.
incredibly vulnerable. And it's that multi-level, like, Princeton doesn't have a medical school, but I'm in trouble right now. Like, I am in deep trouble right now.
It's cool, too, because, like, the second he says it, that's when you see her pinch the IV.
Mm-hmm.
The second he says that, she's like, oh, God. You know what I mean? Like, she knows. Before she clues us in, like, she takes steps to protect herself against whatever he's injecting her with.
I mean, yeah, we see her the first second she gets, she immediately unplugs her IV.
Yeah.
So she is a smart cookie. I mean, she's a survivor. Like, she knows what she needs to do to survive.
Reggie is just so terrifying, too. He's just,
yeah.
I wrote in my notes, like, he's back with his dead eyes and his paralytics and his sadism and his sense of self-worth that is completely unfounded and frighteningly unshakable. Like, he's so gross. He's just got, and he's so, like, oh God, what am I trying to say? He's so, like, open, you know what I mean? Like, his body language, like, like his big, crazy smile and wide open eyes. And, he's, like the way he's holding himself and, like he's totally in control. He's completely comfortable. And it's all just so skeevy. Also, his radical new treatment to shut down certain areas of the brain that make patients behave irrationally, air quotes, sounds a whole hell of a lot like a lobotomy to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. Yeah. And I mean, like, but he's, like, completely deluded himself into, like, it's not just him saying these things because he wants to mess with Wynonna. It's like he's deluded himself into believing them. And then, because it's like, as a result of his, either Jack managed to find a really not okay dude, or he's kind of psychologically damaged Reggie.
Yes, been grooming him for it.
Honestly, go either way. But yeah, I mean, it's not just like, oh yeah, we're going to find this radical treatment. It's genuinely believing that this is what's happening, like that he's doing this and it's going to help, and like genuinely believing in what he's saying. And it just makes him so creepy. But yeah, it does sound suspiciously like a lobotomy.
Yeah. And there's that moment too, like when Bethany dies and he starts like freaking out and he's, kind of destroying his little like operating room or whatever.
Yeah.
And, he's talking, he's got to perfect the procedure or whatever, like, oh, another failed test subject or whatever. I mean, we just, if there was any doubt before that moment, in that second, we see it's just a complete break from reality. He's completely lost in his delusions. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, like I said, this is a very psychologically interesting episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of a nerd for that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's great. It's hard to grasp with him too. It's just, because yeah, I mean, his body language, the way he speaks to her, it's just everything. It's creepy.
Yeah. He's frighteningly comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, it is, just your average white dude, your average boring, straight white dude who's just one of the creepiest people you could run across.
Kind of going back to like episode 1, we actually see Wynonna clasping those blue beads. We actually see her like clutching her necklace after he walks out of the room. She's, called him on not really being a doctor. So like we talked about in the first episode, you guys, those beads are Greek, just like the inscription on the key that she wears. I think they're called like Mati or Matty or something. They're Mati, I think. And they ward against evil. And if Reggie was about to operate on me, I'd clutch them too. I just thought it was like a really cool, it's sort of a full circle thing. We get the end of the 7 here. And in this episode, we see her, holding this charm that she's had since the first episode. Mm-hmm. Or that she first misplaces in the first episode.
Yeah, and I mean, like, she does, I had that in my note too, her clutching it, and when she gets it back at the end of near the end of the episode, the way she holds it, so it is something, like, very important to her, and I don't remember if you made that observation in our spoiler-free or spoiler-filled section of that. But
I don't think
it's
oh, maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't remember. It's been so long.
Anyway, I talked about the necklace.
But yeah.
So I'm talking about it again.
I mean, no, because it is important to note that it is, from what you've researched, a way to ward off evil. So, yeah, I'd be clutching that too. But yeah, when she gets him back too, she's like it's a comfort. They're comforting to her. It's a very comforting, I don't want to say talisman, but I do.
I don't think that's a bad word for it.
No, but it's not exactly the word I'm looking for, but I can't really articulate apparently what I'm going for right now. So that's going to have to work. So
I think it works.
Good. As long as you like it. That's all that matters.
I like it.
Alrighty. But yeah, he's creepy, and it's not entirely unsatisfying when he gets his. Although Jack's nails are scary.
Yeah.
Like, that's some scary, scary crap right there.
Yeah. I have more for that in the spoiler section. We're going to talk about it more, but that was interesting. Because I don't think we've seen a Revenant with that ability yet.
No, not the crazy nonsense like that. But he does give us a lot of really interesting information. Like we mentioned with the stuff with Ward and Bobo, and just kind of what he is for Wynonna and everything. He mentions that he has a lot of names, and when Doc talks about him, he tells Dolls and Waverly that he and Wyatt discovered Jack when they were looking for somebody that he kidnapped, and he was called the Jack of Knives. I mean, he called himself that in letters he sent. And then, when he was found by Wyatt and Doc, he was in a cave and had mutilated like 4 women and cut their organs out. And according to Doc, Wyatt later took on Jack by himself because Doc had already gotten sick. So it seems like Jack must have been one of the last Revenants that was killed. Or one of the last people that Wyatt took out.
And kind of keeping with that, it was a really nice touch having Doc say that the Jack of Knives wrote letters, like taunting the police about his crimes, because there were letters circulated during the Whitechapel murders by someone or some people who were claiming to be the murderer. And it was a media frenzy, I mean, they hadn't seen anything like these killings before. So, naturally the press got a hold of it and, the letters circulated, were published, what have you. But in those letters, the killer called themselves Jack the Ripper. And that's actually how the killer was named. So it was not a case of, the media dubbing the killer this time. The killer, well, there's no proof to say that was actually Jack the Ripper writing those letters, but that is how the name came about.
Yeah, I guess now, it's a good lead into, it is heavily implied that Jack, with the multiple names, the comment about the letters, the mutilating women, later when Lucado mentions that Dolls' report suggests that Wynonna took out one of the most infamous serial killers, it's heavily implied that Jack of Knives is Jack the Ripper.
Yep.
And that's what I was taking a second to Google, because Jack the Ripper was active in 1888 to 1891 in London, which seems to kind of overlap with when the curse was, in theory, maybe, just based on historically when Doc Holliday died. That's kind of what I was using as a reference point just now, because we don't have really a timeline for this show, I don't think, or not really. I could look at Waverly's murder roll, I guess, or I don't know. I don't remember dates and stuff like that as well. But yeah, it's heavily implied that this was Jack the Ripper, and I thought that was kind of a fun addition, even though the idea of that is a little bit of a stretch, considering how difficult it would have been to travel back and forth. I mean, it's not wildly difficult, but it's still taking the boat. Yeah,
that's a substantial amount of time. It's not just the boat passage either. You know what I mean? Then they have to get, farther west and, everything, traveling by horses at that point. So you're right. Yeah.
But it also, it does imply that he started in this continent and then went to London and then somehow returned, or Wyatt pursued him, if we're going on actual Ripper information and with the show. Not that I'm, like I said, I think it's really interesting because Jack the Ripper is kind of an interesting case, and the fact that he was never like caught, they just kind of think they have an idea as to who he was. So I did like that aspect of this episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of a
And
fun
going
addition.
along with that, I thought it was, right before Wynonna kills Jack, we see him lapse into a pretty like posh English accent.
Mm-hmm.
And that combined with like he's wearing a very nice coat. He's got a very dapper little bow tie. He's carrying a walking cane. All of those things kind of suggest to me that the writers on the show maybe hold to the aristocratic theory surrounding the Ripper legend. Because, some historians have speculated that Jack the Ripper was a member of the aristocracy and that at the very least he was a well-educated upper-class man from probably a prominent or influential family.
Right, and even the comment about not being a doctor, because there was a surgical precision, I believe, to the murders, but they didn't believe he was actually a medical professional, correct?
It's debated. Yeah, they just don't know much.
Right.
Nobody can say with much certainty. Yeah, he certainly had a familiarity with anatomy, but, was he a butcher? Who knows?
Well, technically, yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, so he was, but I meant.
I knew what you meant. I couldn't help myself as we talk about how 5 women were brutally murdered. No, yeah. So I did appreciate that as just kind of an interesting thing to tie in because, this show already kind of has fun with the Wyatt Earp legend, the Doc Holliday legend.
Mm-hmm.
Why not, when possible, bring in like, oh, this is what happened to Jack the Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? I like that. And like I said, it's a really interesting case.
It creates this really cool tension kind of up against Reggie's character too, because Jack the Ripper is just a part of our, collective consciousness now. You know what I mean? Like this, it's a legend to us now, but it's real murders that happened that went unsolved by a very human person. So it was cool in this episode that they made him a revenant, but they also circled back with Reggie, who is human, to kind of remind you that human beings are capable of horribly awful things. Here you have this prolific serial killer who turns out to be a revenant, but meanwhile there's a sadistic not doctor cutting women open in purgatory, and he's very much human. So I like it when a fantastical show makes fantastic claims, but then still manages to remind you that human beings are capable of wonderful and terrible things.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Thank you. Because you're absolutely right, and I think this show kind of, does remind us, like, these revenants became revenants because they were not great people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still, at this point, they're demons. They're demons doing these things. So it's kind of takes away the punch a little bit. But yeah, definitely, Reggie is an important addition. And then one of the things that Jack mentions, too, is he says that Wyatt's nose bled when he first met him, too. Which I thought was really interesting,
mm-hmm.
like a weird thing, considering they first met when Jack was human.
Yeah. So
I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. I wasn't really sure what to make of it, but it was worth noting. Also, we haven't mentioned this as far as Wynonna goes. We got a little bit more information about her being institutionalized.
Yeah.
She went through shock therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just like she wasn't just institutionalized, she wasn't just repeatedly told that she was crazy and delusional and stuff like that, but she actually had to suffer through electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awful.
And it kind of makes the entire episode all the more frightening, She was hospitalized and she was subjected to these treatments, and now she's got this guy who's not even a doctor injecting her with stuff, and she can't move, and, she's strapped down. And, well, she's not strapped down, but, she's been paralyzed and all that stuff just adds to the creepy.
Yeah, and especially since ECT is, I think oftentimes it's not even used for stuff like that. It's used for, severe depression, I think, and, mania and stuff like that. So it's interesting. I think it can sometimes be used, like, there's also pieces of the psychosis part of it too, like, but yeah, it's just, she went through, like, a lot more than I think you realize.
Yeah.
As if the being institutionalized wasn't enough. So, yeah, I wanted to mention that. And then we talked a bit about Doc and Dolls and, like, the fight and everything, but I like how Dolls can apparently slow his breathing down, so it makes him seem dead. Like, that's convenient.
Yeah.
And then I like how it was Doc who kind of set Dolls kind of straight with his role in the group, I guess.
Yeah.
For kind of calling him out for not having, I mean, we know Doc and Dolls haven't exactly had the best relationship, but the fact that it's, Doc saying, it shouldn't be an either or situation, you should be fighting, basically.
Yeah.
I really liked that. I thought it led to kind of a nice, like, stalemate with them too. Putting Wynonna in the middle, as much as I abhor a love triangle and all that nonsense, I think putting Wynonna in the middle does it helped give them a stalemate, at least in this episode. So maybe we could deal with it a little bit less, their nonsense. But I think that was all the super important, spoiler-free stuff I had.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
So let's talk about quotes.
I think there were some really good ones in this. I love that just the first one on my list is park your daddy issues because it's time to haul out of here. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, Wynonna to Bethany. I thought it was so good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like the Nedley offering to, I'll swing by and make sure that cat of yours is fed. And she doesn't really like men. Well, who does? Like, I like that. I really do.
Yeah, one of my favorite Nedley lines, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Well, who does? Yeah.
Nobody, Nedley, nobody.
I also thought Doc is comforting Waverly, and he says, now, she's tougher than a boiled owl,
right?
About Wynonna. And it's so, like, why would you boil an owl? Like, who's eating owl? Like, that's so gross.
I think it's a drink.
It's just a weird mental image. I was like, what?
Or something. I don't know. It's the most ridiculous thing. And I love
boiled owl
so much. But I could also be wrong about it being a type of drink. That might have been something that the fandom just did. Hi, fandom. I'm not sure. That's not a Google search I feel like doing right now either. But yeah, no, I like that. And I like when Waverly calls Doc a genius. And Dolls is just like, let's not get carried away.
Yeah.
And we mentioned the prohibition line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his delivery for that one is pretty great.
It is.
And of course, Nicole, what was the last thing you saw? Waverly Earp smile at me from her front porch. And then she kind of gets lost in that moment for a second. And I was like, oh, right. So I was kidnapped.
I especially like it because, like, presumably Waverly's right outside.
Oh, yeah, she's right there. Like, she looks at her when she says it, I think. Yeah, she looks at her.
I like Wynonna kind of trying to talk Reggie down, and she's like, fine, you're not a psycho, you're delightful, top notch.
Yeah. And how she greets him, what up, Dr. Murder? And when she gets Jack later, and she's like, I owe Reggie an apology, you're the sickest puppy in the litter.
Truth.
It's like, even in the face of doom, she's trying to quip. Oh, Doll's telling Doc his body is a treasure trove for science.
Yeah.
And Doc saying, I get to choose who I share my treasure trove with.
Amen. Your nose is bleeding, got a tampon?
Oh, yeah! I didn't have that one. And we did get, after she gets Peacemaker from the whiskey barrel, and Wynonna just has that one, like, oak-aged comment.
Yeah.
when she like, called Peacemaker, she's just like, oak-aged. And I like Doc, when he's talking to Dolls, selling Dolls, what Wyatt used to say, Doc, well, if you stand for nothing, you are sure to fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. And then Jack's last line, it was another, you solved the great mystery, succeeded where Scotland Yard failed, all by your lonesome. And then Wynonna tells him, I ain't interested, and I'm not lonesome, I just prefer to hunt alone. So we kind of talked a little bit about that, but not as many as I normally have, but still quite a few, because I love these writers. The But like I said, that was everything on my list. Did you have another quote?
No, that was it for me. Also, less quotes on my list this time.
Yeah. Well, I think I always have more than you do anyway, because I can never
Quotes,
pick.
yeah.
I'm a quote fiend. What can I say?
Girl, you do you.
I like quotes. I had to clear my notes because I was like, wait a minute, I still have things, but no, I don't. Alrighty, so I think with that, we will wrap up our spoiler-free section. So I know I didn't mention it at the top of the episode, but thank you to everybody who shares and comments and everything. And I know we get a lot of questions about us being on iTunes, and when we can, we'll get on iTunes. It's a little bit difficult just with how we post and everything. But yeah, we'll try to get on because we know it does make it easier to share.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that you want to share us with your friends and stuff like that and want to listen on iTunes. We do get that question a lot, and we're trying. We're still trying to see what's feasible as far as that goes. So when we get it figured out, we'll definitely let you guys know and see if we can't find an easier way to get out there for you.
Yeah.
So with that, Lara, where can they find you online?
You guys can find me at RS Mayfair on Twitter.
Alrighty, and you can find me on Twitter at CMeushaw. That's at CMEUSHAW. And you can find Make Your Peace on Twitter at... I forgot to have it up. My bad. And you can find Make Your Peace on Twitter at 4YE_MYP podcast. And you can find 4YE, which is the site Lara and I both write for, at 4_Y_E, and that is the number 4. And like I said, let me know if you guys want links to stuff. You can look on the site at 4ye.co.uk or just DM us. Our DMs are open, and feel free to reply or just like tweet at us. We do see that stuff. Usually Lara jumps on it a lot quicker than I do. But we see it. So if you guys have questions or comments, just let us know. We do also get to, if you're listening to this on YouTube. On YouTube. No, that was like a whole other thought. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can comment there and we will see it eventually. Sometimes we just get to those a little bit later because we don't get the notifications.
Yeah.
But we do see everything that you guys say to us, and even if one of us responds, chances are both of us saw it pretty immediately. So with that, let's go ahead and switch on over to our spoiler-filled section. So if you don't want to be spoiled for the rest of Season 1 or Season 2, then please turn it off now. Because I will not be responsible for you getting... I will not be blamed. Not responsible for it. But alrighty, if you're leaving us now, we will see you next time for a discussion on episode 9.
Thanks, guys.
Alrighty, so once again, we were about to get into a spoiler-filled discussion. So if you don't want to be spoiled, please turn it off now. Alrighty, so let's talk a little bit spoiler-wise. Oh, first I want to mention, we have an air date for Season 3.
Yes.
Season 3 will premiere on July 20th, so it's a little bit later this year. But I have a feeling part of that is because it coincides with San Diego Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
That is Comic-Con weekend. So it's Friday, the 20th, I think at 9? Oh god, I failed. I'm a monster. I was all set with the date, but I don't remember the time.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Oh, damn it.
I would help you if I could.
No, I got it. Yes, it's, okay. So yeah, it's July 20th at 9 p.m. and that's Eastern and everything. So, on Sci-Fi. So get your DVRs ready, harass everybody you need to watch. We still don't have an idea as to when Season 2 is going to be on Netflix. We just know it's going to be soon. So I'm assuming it might be June at the latest because of when Season 3 airs. I don't think they'd make it July. They might. But it is available for purchase on iTunes and Amazon. So you could always do that. But yeah, now is the time to start harassing people. If you haven't been harassing them already, now is the time to harass people to watch, so that they are all prepared to watch live with season 3.
And now let us commence the quest to renew for season 4. Ready, set, go.
Alrighty, so where do you want to start in our spoiler-filled discussion?
So a lot of my stuff has to do with Jack, and I thought, like, did we see him using, like, honest-to-goodness telekinesis? Because when Wynonna reaches for Peacemaker in the barrel, something, like, knocks her back. Something, like, throws her back.
It seemed to be, and it seemed like he also, because it's not just, we do see him kind of call his cane to him, too, a little bit later, when he's squaring off against Doc.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it could be interesting, although, interestingly, well, no, never mind. Yeah, so it seems like we kind of did get another telekinetic revenant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this one didn't seem to be, like, having to do with metal or anything like that. Like, this seemed to be just good old-fashioned telekinesis.
I was so focused on the cane, which is a cane sword, that I almost was like, no, he is metal. But yeah, I forgot about Wynonna, and Wynonna is not made of metal as far as I know.
She is not metal, I don't think.
She is not Wolverine? Okay, my bad.
There's no adamantium.
It could be another metal.
And, like, also it could be. He also, he's got those, like, glowing hot claws, which is something that we don't see any other Revenant using. And he inspires these nosebleeds. We don't see anybody else have that effect on her. And it's sort of weird because I personally feel like Bobo is the most powerful Revenant, right? Like, he seems that way to me, but I don't know. Jack kind of calls a lot of that into question. Like, Bobo doesn't have cauterizing claws. He doesn't have, his telekinesis it's metal based, and stuff like that. So Jack has, more of like a range, I guess, that he can use that ability. I'm wondering if, what they're trying to tell us is, like, the more evil you are in life, the more powerful you'll be as a Revenant.
I mean, we've kind of gotten pieces of that almost with the other Revenants, like with how Killer Miller was a shadow, because he was literally a shadow assassin.
Yeah.
And I mean,
the barber guy, in and out of mirrors and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it is kind of one of those things where, I guess it kind of, his tools are his hands. So, and he used knives. So I guess you can kind of stretch
True.
That would manifest itself in
that way.
Yeah. And my guess is...
That's a good point, yeah.
He also, like, we get this, every time they're resurrected, they are more demonic. But we've also been told that the Seven is fairly powerful, so they can't have been killed that many times.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good point about Jack compared to Bobo. Because the pieces we've gotten from Bobo so far is that he has the big brand that seems to be connected to everybody.
Yeah.
But we also know that he was an innocent who was in the way.
True, yeah.
So I don't know if it's like just the nature of the curse that Constance created, because she knew that Bobo had that relationship with Wyatt, that she kind of put him in that position of power, gave him that connection to the other Revenants, and that's what makes him, I don't know.
Yeah.
It does kind of ask the question, why is Bobo in power?
Yeah, I mean, and I like Bobo. I'm a fan of Bobo. I'm just saying, like, that those were some really unique abilities that we saw in Jack, and he seemed to have a lot of, like, freedom to use them, kind of a thing. So it was just a question mark for me, but I think that's some good speculation, honestly. I
mean, and there's also the fact that Jack doesn't really. I mean, he talked about being a loner. He's not really the leader type. He is a hunter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those, he has enough power to be the leader, but he doesn't want it.
Yeah.
It really kind of goes against who he is, because, at his core, he's this loner who, he's a serial killer, and, that's...
Not a team player.
Not quite. So, So, it's definitely an interesting thought.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of get that with like you look at some of the other 7 as well. Killer Miller was once again, he was an assassin. He was a hired gun. So also a loner. So he also wouldn't make a good leader. You pull out, I'm just going to run down the list now just for funsies. So it's like you kind of look at personality-wise at the rest of the 7, it's none of them really would have been fit. They're just this group of revs that were brought together for a purpose. Right. But Bobo's got that leadership position.
He's a man of the people.
But it's definitely an interesting question because Jack is powerful.
Yeah. And he just has such an effect on her, you know.
And apparently why, and like I...
Yeah, right, yeah, why too, yeah.
The nosebleed thing, I mean, that had to have happened when Jack was human.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is just kind of a weird thing. Unless it's like an oops, but it could have been an oops. Kind of talking about Bobo and Jack's information, you know, we do get that, we find out later that Jack was telling the truth. That Bobo and Ward did have an agreement.
Yep.
That Ward then kind of tried to turn around and renege on. But yeah, so it is interesting that Jack didn't really tell her anything that wasn't true.
Right. Yeah, he didn't really lie to her.
Mm-mm.
He also, going on his not lying, he gives us another hint that Willa is still alive. Yes. He makes that face when Wynonna says that the 7 killed her sister. And it's just kind of a little, I mean, nobody can see my face right now, but, you know, like it's just this little like, you know, like he's not going to confirm or deny that.
And he also, along with that, he also says he wishes he could stay. There's a reunion and escape, so much blood. But yeah, he does, the reunion he's referring to has to be Willa.
Yeah, it does.
Which is interesting because some of the 7 and the Revenants, you know, talk like Willa is in fact dead. And as far as they know, she's dead. And from what Bobo said, he said that she was dead to save her, to protect her.
Yeah.
But Jack knows that she's not.
Right.
So was Jack responsible? Was Jack maybe, once again, because of his loner status, is he maybe have more of a relationship with Bobo that would allow him that information? Or, you know, because he's not going to do anything with it, he's just going to let it be.
Right.
Did we ever find out how Bobo got the BBD docs?
I don't think so.
That's never actually brought up again, is it?
I don't think so.
It's also like...
But there's still so much we don't know about that organization. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're told that it comes back in a surprising way or somewhat, however it was, what they worded it when Emily talked about it at Lexicon. I was just wondering. I didn't think so. And then, like, Whiskey Jim makes the comment about Bobo's reach extending beyond the triangle and everything. But we don't really see that a lot outside of Bobo talking about having friends in Maldito.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. Those are kind of the only 2. We get to see the effect of killing the 7th does and what that does to Wynonna in episode 9, but we might as well talk about that next week.
Yeah.
So that was actually it on my list.
That's it on mine too.
Sweet. So, relatively short spoiler conversation, which is fine by me. If you guys have anything that you want to add or comment on or we missed or screwed up, sometimes, as mentioned, I forget to Google before we start recording. And sometimes I misspeak or I let details slip. So,
Same.
If you have a correction, as long as it's polite, I'm happy to hear it. Or like I said, if you have a comment, let us know what you thought of the episode. Because like I said, I really like this episode. And I think psychologically it's a really good one.
I do too.
So, yeah, with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap us up. So we've already done our where to find us and everything. So with that, we will see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Or not next week. Next time. I can't lie and say it's going to be next week. We keep doing these things every other week. So thanks, everybody, for listening.